Can cloud-based password managers be trusted, or should you only go offline? Anonymous email providers, Pixel versus iPhone, what to do with old accounts you no longer need, cryptocurrency best practices, private routers, Monero RSS feeds, and more. We got a fun week for you all in the Q&A. This is for Surveillance Report 240, where we answer questions from people who support this podcast and make it possible for all of you to listen to. You can view and join the questions yourself by joining us on Patreon. And there's a reminder that this is a great problem to have. It means a lot of you are getting active and joining the Q&A, but we are being a little bit more restrictive on the comments. We're not cutting out like an entire person, but if any of you are asking like 5 questions, we might start cutting 1 or 2 of them if time doesn't allow. So that's just a way to give everyone a fair chance. So the first question and the highlight question is from David Johnson, our classic David Johnson. And he's got a few of them, and we aren't going to cover all of them, but we're going to do our best here. So the main one is, it is not uncommon to hear people categorically refuse to use a cloud-synced password manager. But it seems that most reputable ones now are zero knowledge. In more mainstream scenarios, do you think there's a sound reason to avoid cloud-synced password managers as a class? So yeah, I actually see this a lot. Anytime I make a video on Techlore that's about cloud-based password managers where I compare them or talk about them, there's inevitably going to be, it's a minority, but a vocal minority of people who say, I don't touch anything that touches the cloud. It's a very fair place that these individuals are coming from. And this is a position I've been in as well, because the concept of your data being stored on a server is a bit spooky, especially with how big tech and traditionally how that works. With that said, the more that I dug into how this stuff actually works and how end-to-end encryption works and zero knowledge and how the encryption behind the scenes actually works, it's fundamentally not that different. Because while your data might be stored on the server, the encryption key to unlock the data is still on your device. It's just changing what is stored on your device, if that makes sense. So I'm the kind of person that if you just really don't like any of it, you don't trust people to do this properly, even if it's open source, even if it's been audited, even if they're doing best practices, even if it's zero knowledge and it's like technically unfeasible and even impossible for these people to access your data, but you still don't like the idea, then sure, go ahead and roll over KeePass, do your own syncing, use SyncThing, whatever you want to do. But if you're somebody who trusts tech and you trust the math, you trust the encryption, which I do, the more I dug into it, it's one of those things that once you understand it a bit better, I think it's actually easier to put trust in it rather than the inverse. And when that happens, I think it's, to me, the threat model is pretty darn similar. Like the number of people who I think a cloud-based password manager doesn't work for, but KeePass does, I don't even know what that demographic would look like. So I used to be a KeePass user. I fully moved over to cloud-based password managers. I think the convenience is very worth it. And that's what I have to say. But ultimately, if you don't trust it, you don't trust it. And there are other solutions for those people as well.
I 100% agree. In answer to your actual question, the only argument I think that makes sense is the idea that we might see another LastPass situation where your vault gets stolen and now cyber criminals have all the time in the world to try and hack it. However, as Henry pointed out, if they're source available, if they're audited and things like that, we should have assurance that it's extremely unlikely they're going to be able to do that anytime soon. Not to harp on it, but right after LastPass, I remember somebody opened an issue on Bitwarden because, obviously everybody went and looked at these password managers and were like, hold on a minute, let's make sure we're good. They open an issue and they're like, hey, we're not using Argon 2 as a hash and we really should. And Bitwarden replied, and they gave a very good reply of here's why we haven't been, here's our logic. But you know what? Fair argument. We're going to go ahead and roll that out. And so Bitwarden got a little bit better, which was the nice thing that happened after LastPass. So I think that is a fair thing to be concerned about. But I think, again, if we're using password managers that we know are secure and have had those eyes looking at them, then I think, and especially if you're using strong two-factor, strong passphrases, things like that, I think you can rest reasonably assured that your password vault is safe. However, like Henry said, if you're willing to put up with that inconvenience and you're really that concerned about it, I think it's completely fair to say, I'm going to opt out. And personally, here's my thing. I fully support that. If you say, I'm not a fan, I don't want to use it, more power to you. What I don't like seeing is people saying, everything in the cloud is compromised. You're an idiot if you're using a cloud-based password manager, because I'm telling you right now, my wife is never going to use KeePass. My sister is never going to use KeePass. My mother would have never used KeePass. And some of you people are like, okay, then write them down in a notebook. They're not going to do it. That's the point. So their options are either use something like Bitwarden or Proton that arguably has a little bit of a trade-off but is very secure, or go back to reusing the same password everywhere. And I'm telling you, those are the only two choices. End of story. Given those two choices, I would rather people use the cloud-based password manager. I think for most people, it's totally worth the risk and the trade-off, especially, again, if you're using a good, trusted one. If you don't want to use it, I respect that. I support you. I hope you continue to have those options, but just respect that other people have different threat models.
That is kind of the subtext of what I'm also getting at with those comments, is that they're missing the whole point of like why I'm making the content in the first place and what I'm trying to talk about and say, which is that I'm not here to take away your KeePass. I still use KeePass for some things that I like air-gapped and offline, but that's more because those are like the absolute most sensitive things. But I still keep like all my banking passwords. I keep everything to get access to my entire life in a cloud-based password manager, right? So I don't know. I think people are really missing the point when they try to assert that it's bad practice to use a cloud-based password manager. That's not true. It's not bad practice. It's bad practice to be reusing the same password on every website. That's bad practice, and that's exactly what cloud-based password managers still solve.
Not to harp on it too much, but we say this every once in a while. We are here trying to speak to the vast majority of people. We're not here trying to speak to the extremists, the high threat model. Like even on the New Oil, if you read our threat model page, and I think I have this in the about page somewhere too, when I finish talking about threat models, I have a section at the bottom that's like, what threat model does this website address? And I say, I'm here to help you get out of mass surveillance, targeted advertising, the stuff that catches 80, 90% of people. I'm not here to tell you how to avoid a targeted, dedicated adversary. So keep in mind our threat model when we give this kind of advice. We're not talking to the Edward Snowdens. We're talking to the everyday people who are like, I care about this stuff, but not enough to like go hardcore. The next question from David Johnson says, prompted by the recent Techlore email provider review, do you know of a privacy over anonymity prioritizing email provider that encrypts all emails in your account with a key that you control, such as Proton and Tuda, but doesn't carry the counter-cultural associations in the minds of people that Proton and Tuda have because of their emphasis on user anonymity? So in other words, you say Proton and Tuda, in your experience, have kind of this vibe where when you hand somebody a Proton Mail email address, their thought is like, what are you trying to hide? And he's like, do you know anybody that doesn't have that association? And actually, real quick, I do want to call out this part specifically. In your question, you mentioned iCloud has advanced data protection, but you're not even sure how much that encrypts. To my knowledge, it doesn't encrypt anything. Email is not included in advanced data protection.
Calendar email contacts, not an ADP.
Yeah, there you go. So it's basically the same as like Gmail or Yahoo. Or in answer to the main question, I don't know of anything like that. And honestly, it has not impacted me in my day-to-day life at all. I use Proton Mail quite a bit. I try to use custom domains and simple login wherever possible, but every once in a while, I do have a situation where it's unavoidable and I have to use my Proton Mail. I've never even gotten so much as a look from anybody. The closest I've ever gotten is I have a friend who listens to a lot of different journalists. Let me put it that way. Not just the fringe people. He keeps his pulse on the news pretty well. And I remember when I first met him, the topic of Proton Mail came up. He's like, oh, hey, Project Veritas uses them. That's the extent I've ever had anyone comment on it. That's all I got. I haven't really run into that stereotype or that stigma very much. And I still think, regardless of stereotype and stigma, I think Proton and Tuda are the two best encrypted email providers we have right now.
Pretty much the same answer. You know, StartMail doesn't have as much of a reputation.
I argue it's not as encrypted, though, and I think he might have even mentioned that in his question.
Yeah, so it's just another option. I think StartMail doesn't have much of a negative reputation. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, custom domains kind of solve this problem. When I give people my techlore.tech email, it's like, oh, okay, they wouldn't know, all right? They're just sending an email to my custom domain. And if they're a Proton user, they'll be surprised. And if they're not, they'll never know. So that's kind of probably the easiest solution, regardless of which email provider you use.
One of these days when I have time to make videos again, I should really make a video about custom domains because they're really so much easier to set up than people think they are.
Yeah, no, they really are.
The hardest part is coming up with a domain.
Would you be mad if I beat you to that video?
No, because it's probably going to take me at least a year. So go for it.
This is kind of just a quick fun one. If you have an employer-managed phone and you had the money to buy a new separate dedicated device just for that purpose, well, if it's employer-managed, hopefully they'd pay for it. So no concern about within-device tracking factors. Would you choose an iPhone or a Pixel, a stock Android, or something else? I think this is pretty easy to solve as somebody who already does have Apple devices for work for Techlore. It'd be Apple. I think Apple is just a little bit more conducive to working for me. I think the one exception is if you only were able to have one device. Like if you had to have one device that was both for work and personal, I just don't think you can beat Android's work profile feature. So that's something that would be a game changer if I had to keep my work and personal on the same device. That's my short answer.
I agree with you actually, and I'm in this situation right now. I have both an Android and I had an iPhone. It broke at work, ironically, but I was using it as a work phone. I'm going to buy another one here soon. My logic is, say you have one of both. I want to use the Android and I want to put a de-Googled operating system like Graphene or Calyx on it, and that way I have the maximum level of privacy for my personal life. And I've told you guys before, I kind of view work as automatically compromised. Like we are neck deep in the Microsoft ecosystem. And just, there's so many, like, we had a job where we had to download one of those apps to work the elevator to get up to the floor. Like, as far as I'm concerned, a work phone is already compromised. So I would rather have the maximum privacy device for myself to protect my privacy. And then I don't really care what my work phone is. But that said, you said your two main concerns are overall security and ability to change the device settings. It probably depends on the MDM, but the iPhone, at least with my work, I was able to change almost all the settings, or all the settings I can remember. And I mean, iPhones are already secure. I was able to turn lockdown mode on but after I installed the MDM. And also, so many things are, here in the US at least, so many things are like iPhone based. Like iPhones are so ubiquitous here that everything has an iPhone app and it works pretty well. But the Android app is, if it exists, it's kind of hit or miss.
Yeah, I can't think of a single like professional scenario where there's like not an iPhone app
Exactly.
for something.
So like, yeah, just having a work iPhone solved so many of my issues. But yeah, like Henry said, here in the US, legally, if they were going to require you to put company software on a device, they have to provide you with that device. So how much you want to fight with them over that, that's a whole political thing. How much clout do you have at work, this, that, and the other, but just, know your rights. The next question says, in one of the previous episodes, Nate seems to have mentioned that he doesn't use a SIM card. Is that correct? And if so, how do you get network connectivity away from Wi-Fi? The answer is I don't. I do. I'm cheating. So, okay, let me be honest with you guys. I stopped using a SIM card because there was a point where my wife and I were burning through money so hard that we were screaming towards bankruptcy. I'm just going to be totally honest with you guys. And so I went into hardcore money saving mode. And I was like, anything that does not need to be spent will not be spent, at least for like a month or two, until we figure out where the hell all our money is going and get this under control. Around that same time, my job decided to change up their policy. And originally they had like, we'll reimburse your phone usage up to this amount, just submit a copy of your phone bill. They pulled it away and they decided we're just going to give everybody $40 a month and that's going to be it, period. It's going to be rolled into your paycheck, etc. And I was like, well, my phone bill is more than $40 a month. And so I was like, well, if they're not going to cover it, I'm out. Because 90% of the time I'm on Wi-Fi anyways. So I stopped paying for a SIM card. My solution to the rare occasions when I don't have Wi-Fi is I have a Calyx hotspot that I'm able to bill to the New Oil. And then once my wife and I got our money under control, it was like, well, honestly, this is working great 90% of the time. Like there are some hiccups here and there, but overall, it's like, this is not an issue. And honestly, most of my issues are not even related to the hotspot. They're related to something else. So it just kind of ended up in one of those situations where it's like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It honestly doesn't even have to do with privacy. It had to do with that. Here I am. And honestly, I'm on Wi-Fi 90% of the time. It works great. If I had kids, if I didn't have the Calyx hotspot, it would probably be a different story. But for my situation, it works. I don't know if that was too much honesty.
The funny plot twist is that if you ever watched the Techlore live stream, like 5 years ago, back when I didn't have Wi-Fi at home, I was testing out just using a Calyx hotspot for everything. That's the hotspot that Nate is now using. So
the Nate is going to replace soon because it is definitely at the end of its lifespan. It has gotten the hell beat out of it.
We met up recently in Seattle and he showed me the thing and it's pretty beat up. You're like banging it against the wall in your free time. So
I don't bang it against it. I work on a lot of construction sites. I don't do it on purpose. No, it's seen some use. I need a new one anyways. So.
I mean, that thing's probably got some insane use after all these years. So
I know that thing's got to be at least like what, five years old at this point?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. This next one is directed towards me. It seems that Henry prefers to use Synology apps for self-hosted services instead of Nextcloud, even though Synology's focus is hardware, not software, and its apps appear to be closed source, whereas Nextcloud is open source. Is it only a matter of convenience, etc.? Pretty much asking why I do that. Honestly, it's just because even hosting Nextcloud on a NAS is quite a bit more work. You kind of allude to this. Last I checked, if someone has a better way to do it, please let me know, because I actually in a lot of ways would probably prefer the Nextcloud ecosystem. In my Synology review, I did do my fair share of complaining about the Synology suite. While I love it overall, it could be better. Last I checked, in Nextcloud, you still have to like run Docker on your NAS, you have to install Nextcloud, you still have to do the maintenance for that installation. And for me, what I like about Synology is it's plug and go. You just plug in the damn NAS, it just connects to a network, and then you can just connect to it, and that's it. And the whole Nextcloud on top of a NAS thing actually does break that simplicity for me a little bit. I'm like the most fake normie person self-hosting in the world, because I don't even want to bother to set up like Nextcloud and a Docker on something that already pretty much handles it for me. So that's my reasoning. It's mostly out of laziness and simplicity, but we'll call it simplicity instead of laziness. For the record, I am gonna look more into it, because I have been thinking about Nextcloud a little bit more, but I do want to just use Nextcloud in a way that doesn't make my maintenance and my life a living hell, which it doesn't. Nextcloud is a beautiful piece of software. It's just for me. Like, it doesn't make my life a living hell, which is like, if it doesn't always work, I'm just gonna get annoyed. So that's what I fear.
I will agree with you. Initial setup is like a whole day process. And this is somebody who's set it up like multiple times. If it goes smooth, it's half a day, but I would plan a whole day at least. And then like running the backups, and I mean, running updates is easy enough, but yeah, it's a process. You're not wrong.
Yeah, what I wish that would happen. So if any of you have used Synology before, you know this, and if you haven't, Synology has its own native app store. It's not like Apple's app store. It's got like maybe 30 apps on it, and they all must have some formal partnership with Synology to be in there in the first place. So for example, there's Mega, the cloud provider. They have something that you can just install in their app store. Also, Tailscale has an app that you just install, and you literally just click install, you open the app, and then you just set up what you need to configure it within the NAS. If Nextcloud had something like that, like a pre-packaged thing that was built into Synology's ecosystem, I would switch over to it in a heartbeat. I'm sure it's harder to get that done than it seems, but that's what I would love to see personally.
All right, our next question comes from Dark Horse MBA. You say you've been going through the laborious process of cleaning up your website and service logins. You have a several step process that you'd like to run by us. You're using your password manager as a master list of all your accounts. Fair enough. And I expect to complete this process in my spare time with the next few months. Real quick, I just want to point that out. I really recommend that to especially quote unquote normies. I was that complete lunatic that sat down one weekend and changed every single login I had to a secure password and moved it to my password manager. And that sucked, especially because back then I had a lot more accounts because, you know, I was that normal person who was signing up for everything. So pace yourself. I'll put it that way. Okay, so you say, for example, you have an account with a local pizza place and you want to decide the following. If you no longer need or want the account, you go to the site, request that the account data be deleted. You can always sign up again later if you want. If you can't delete the request, you tag it as such, change all the data to like a throwaway email and stuff like that. If you want the account but don't care about lost data, I'm not sure what you mean by lost data, you can still request an account and data deletion, and then you create a new account with an alias data where possible. And then you say, if I want to keep the account and retain the past data like transaction history, watch videos, etc., change the email and password, change the user ID, username, display name, and then change personal or customer data to alias or fake data where possible. So question number one, what do you think about that process? I think it's great. The main thing I want to point out is in the first one, if you don't want the account, but you can't delete it for some reason, one thing that I've heard recommended that I can attest works, make like a separate folder in your password manager and chuck it over there. And then maybe once every like 6 months or years, circle back and check on it. Because I've seen a lot of services that originally when I got into privacy, they didn't allow account deletion or whatever. But then 6 months later, I checked back and now they do. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. If you can't delete the account, definitely change the data, make it all fake data, stuff like that. You say, what's the risk associated with using the same username or screen name across accounts? Username for sure. There are tools out there, pretty well-known tools that can correlate a username across popular services like Facebook, Twitter, stuff like that. Display name, I would say that's just more confirmation. If I have the right account. This happened to me in a Discord server. So I usually go by Nate B online, you know, because I'm Nate. I was in a Discord server where I was using a different name and I saw somebody else with Nate B and I kind of did a double take and it turned out I actually knew who that person was. It was long story short, it was a podcast. I knew he was one of the hosts. I didn't know his last name started with a B. I was like, oh my God, another Nate B. But I did a double take because I was like, hold on, who is this guy? Like, is somebody impersonating me or something? And then I realized I'm like, oh no, it's okay. But yeah, so I mean, that's what I mean. If you find this other Nate B online and he's a completely different Nate, it's like, oh, that's obviously not the right Nate. So yeah, overall, I think it's a really solid idea, solid process. Other than the notes I added, I would keep doing that personally.
Yeah, no extra feedback on my end. Seems like a good plan. The second question from same person, Dark Horse MBA. Many privacy advocates recommend using Monero, Bitcoin, or other cryptocurrencies for transactions. Where can I find a reliable guide to learn how to buy, store, and use crypto, as well as general cryptocurrency education? Additionally, I'd also like to know more about hard or offline wallets. I once had a few $1,000s in Bitcoin stored with a third party, but they went bankrupt and I lost it all. It wasn't a situation that wiped me out completely, but it did make me reluctant to try any of this again. And also, you said some really nice things, so thank you for the kind words there at the end. There isn't like one exact guide to point you to. I really like Seth for Privacy's stuff. It can be a bit more technical, but he also keeps things very beginner friendly. Seth is he does a lot of good stuff in the Monero and Bitcoin space for like the privacy angle. But it's actually very simple. As long as you keep your money off of exchanges and people who hold your keys, you're pretty darn safe, right? Especially like I know that a few $1,000s is a lot to some people and isn't a lot to some other people, but in the cryptocurrency world, that's not an amount of money that should make you a targeted individual. Like the amount that'll get you targeted is when you have hundreds of thousands, millions, even billions for some of these people. So if you only have, I say only, right, in air quotes, because it's not a small amount of money, but if you only have a few $1,000s, I personally, if it were me, I would just keep it in something like a non-custodial wallet. Monero is great. It's Android only if you only want Monero. If you want something that's multi-crypto, there is Cake Wallet. I do marketing for Cake Wallet, but I would still recommend Cake, and I was recommending Cake before I joined them. And there are other non-custodial wallets out there, but that's really the most important thing is to just use a non-custodial wallet. When it's non-custodial, it means you own your encryption keys. If your wallet disappears the next day, you can import the seeds into any other wallet out there. In fact, you can have those seeds on multiple different wallets all at the same time. I wouldn't be transacting with them at the same time, but it's kind of like TOTP codes. We tell you guys to use NTAuth, we tell you guys to use ProtonAuth, we tell you guys to use all of these different services that allow you to own your 2FA codes and import them into multiple devices. And that's the same thing with cryptocurrency. It can't really be stolen if you actually are the person who controls the keys to your money. So that's really where I'd start. And I don't think you can go wrong with anything that supports both Monero and Bitcoin right now.
I don't have anything to add. I was going to recommend Seth. I know he's got links to other guides on his website. I'm actually in the process of scripting a video all about cryptocurrency because after Trump got elected, because Trump made a lot of like really positive crypto comments, cryptocurrency started popping off. And I saw everybody around me literally saying stuff like, I don't know what any of this stuff is, but I bought it because it's going up. And I'm just like, oh my God, no. So I was like, I'm going to make a crypto video. And I interviewed Key from Session, which he's great. Key, if you're watching this, I'm sorry it's taking me so long. But anyways, yeah, one of these days, I still plan to publish that video. And that's going to cover all the basics, like literally from the ground up. What is cryptocurrency? You know, don't put more in than you're willing to lose. Like Henry was saying, cold wallets versus hot wallets. Basically everything you need to know to play around in crypto without losing all your money. So, but yeah, I agree with Henry. Just if you're not actively trading it, take it out of an exchange. Other than that, the main thing I would say is Bitcoin is not anonymous, but Monero is. You can make Bitcoin anonymous, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah. And the last question, I actually missed this. You asked about hard or offline wallets. I think these are awesome tools. They offer a lot of security. They essentially your private keys that sign transactions are kept offline. This is something like a Ledger, a Trezor, Bitbox, or some of these apps have like Sidekick apps. So Monero has Monero Sidekick, Cake Wallet has Cupcake, which is like software versions of these offline signing things that do give you extra security. I think if you're getting started, you know, given the way the space looks right now, if we just got everybody away from custodial wallets to self-custody, that's going to do 90% of the work for most people. And then if you do have a lot of funds and you want that extra security, then you can look into moving it to something a bit more dedicated. I don't think you need a hardware wallet to get started and have good basic security and privacy though. So if you're thinking about getting started, don't let that be a friction point, is what I'd say.
All right, our next question will come from Onion Fragment, and this is an XMR chat question. For those of you who don't know, XMR chat is a platform where you can go and tip us a little bit of Monero, and in return, you can ask a question, and we will see that question and try to answer it here on the podcast. So Onion Fragment asks, is there any way to get access to the private RSS feed by paying you guys with Monero instead of using Patreon? I've tried many times, but I can't seem to be able to set up a Patreon account without immediately getting banned for no reason at all. Mood, Telegram. Anyways, first of all, I know obviously when you asked this question, you didn't know this, but we have just announced a Ghost. I would go and try that. Hopefully Ghost will be a little bit more permissive than Patreon. It's a little bit more privacy respecting. And Ghost is, just to be clear, Ghost is a mirror of Patreon. Like, it's the same price, it's going to be the same posts, and there's an RSS feed in Ghost. Like, once you sign up, you will get an email about how to, because I've done this with 404 Media, you will get an email about how to set up your RSS feed, how to subscribe. They'll send you the link, the whole nine. I would try that if your issue is getting banned with Patreon. As far as paying us with XMR, that is not an option on Ghost. We do not currently have a system in place for that. That is something Henry and I would have to discuss, and we have not had that discussion. So if Ghost still won't let you in, I guess if there's a real demand for that, let us know, and Henry and I can talk about it. But I'm not even going to hint at any promises because that sounds like a lot of work. Alternately, if you're going to send us any suggestions of like, here's a platform that makes it super easy, definitely go ahead and send us that, because that we might look into. But at this time, we're not aware of any simple ways to do this. Yeah, it would be really cool. Like, there's a few options rattling around in the back of my brain, but yeah, it would have to be something that does not add significant workload, because Ghost is already going to add some extra workload. We're basically going to have to upload the podcast an extra time now, which we already upload like 4 times.
Exactly what Nate said. Actually, I was going to joke and say we can shut down that discussion before it starts, because I love Monero. I would love to replicate everything I do with both Techlore and surveillance support with Monero, especially when it comes to these perks. And I really love projects like XMR Chat because they replicate like YouTube comments and live stream comments, super chats, that kind of thing. We need more of that though, especially when it comes to Patreon and stuff like this, like offering exclusive perks to people via Monero that actually match the same features, like giving private RSS feeds. For context, for anyone on Patreon or now Ghost, that RSS feed isn't just like a private hidden link. It's actually an individual link just for you that is tied to your account. So if you stop subscribing to us on Patreon, that link will stop working. So it really is like your own dedicated link. I do not know of any way to set this up with like an auto subscription or something that you refill with your Monero wallet that would facilitate this. We'd probably have to self-host something. It's just asking a lot from us. And again, this is, both of us have, not to say that we don't love doing this podcast, but we both have a lot of other things to manage as well. It's asking a lot from us to do something like this, as much as I would love to see it, and I'm sure Nate would love to see it.
Quick update, video viewers can see this, but audio listeners cannot. After we recorded this, I went to go grab screenshots, and Onion Fragment said that Ghost actually did work and did not ban him like Patreon does. So yeah, if any of you guys are experiencing issues with Patreon, go check out Ghost. And again, if you want to wait a few weeks, totally understand, but that is an option coming soon.
The way I'll finish this out, if any of you know an easy, convenient way that you think aligns with and fixes some of the stuff that we're talking about, please let us know. Like, we really would like to make this work. There is no reason for us not to give you guys easier options to support us that align with our values. Like, that is completely up our alley. But we just don't know of a clean way to do it. So if anyone knows, let us know. All right, and the last question we have this week is from Slowly Improving, and we hope you are. And this is also from XMR Chat. They say, thank you for your ongoing commitment to the podcast and for the ability to contribute anonymously with XMR Chat. Yes, we like it as well. They're pretty much saying that they're using a modem router provided by their ISP, and they'd like to upgrade to something more secure. Basically, which ones do we recommend based on long-term support, VPN/custom DNS support for the whole network and user friendliness? And they also ask about how to split tunnel VPNs. So I'm actually a really bad person to ask for this right now because my current provider is fiber-based and they only allow me to use their thing. Like, you can do some really hacky stuff, but it's practically impossible to use anything else. So I'm actually a bit out of the loop on kind of the newest models. I could have told you this maybe a few years ago, but lately I'm really out of the loop. So I hope Nate has a better answer for you here.
First of all, have you tried putting your router downstream? Because the place I moved into, they provided the Wi-Fi. And when I asked them about it, they were like, no, you have to use ours. Like, you can't put your own router downstream of ours. It won't work. We've been here 3 years and it's working just fine.
I don't think so. Let me check.
Their internet sucks for the record, but it's not our router, and we've confirmed that.
It might be possible, actually, but that's based on a very loose Duck AI generated answer. I'll dig more into it.
Because yeah, that's what I do. I'm in the same boat as like when you have fiber, there's like a specific fiber connection that goes into the router. And so they're like, no, you need our router because it converts the fiber and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, cool. So just plug it into their router and then take a single Ethernet to your router and then just shut off their Wi-Fi and everything and use your router. In my experience, it's always worked fine, but your mileage may vary. Custom DNS, I have yet to see a router, even one provided by the ISP, that will not let you use a different DNS server. I accept the argument that we don't know how accurate that is. Like maybe they're sending requests to them as well to spy on you. I wouldn't put it past them. It doesn't sound technically difficult in my mind. But yeah, I think you should be able to change the DNS at very least. Which ones do we recommend? I don't know, to be honest. I bought a router that was compatible with DDWRT like literally about 6 or 7 years ago, and it's still getting updates. And I haven't had a need to consider upgrading since. You did actually mention this in your question. DDWRT is pretty intense. I am probably not using 80% of what that router can do, but it works. Again, you specifically called out, I mentioned that my wife was really frustrated with the internet being out all the time. That's not a DDWRT thing. That was a me learning how to set it up properly thing. One thing you could do, as Henry and I were just talking about, you could set up the ISP router. You could set up your router downstream, and then you could use that as a test bed and figure it out and get it dialed in the way you want and use it for a couple weeks, make sure it's stable. And then once it's stable, you have everybody migrate to that. And in the meantime, everybody use the regular router where nobody will be upset because it works. For audio listeners, you specifically mentioned, you're like, yeah, I'm in the same boat. I can't have like my router going out. My family will be super upset. So in answer to the rest of your questions, like which ones support long-term support, VPNs, user friendliness. I mean, user friendliness is probably going to be any off-the-shelf router. They're all designed to be pretty user-friendly. I would do your research on which ones are getting long-term support, have the features you need, support VPNs. And then as for split tunneling, it probably depends, but I know on my router, both the stock and the, I'm assuming the stock, and the DDWRT, you can tell it which networks you want the VPN to apply to. So like my VPN currently is on the guest network, and basically like an IoT network. I trust my wife to turn on her VPN. I would prefer to control my VPN because I want to split tunnel certain things like Tor and Signal. Things that would normally be smart devices, those are all going through a VPN. Guest networks going through a VPN. You should be able to do that in the router, in the GUI. I don't have a specific answer for you. All I can say is in my experience, DDWRT, once you get the hang of it, there's a learning curve. Maybe see if you can run 2 networks in parallel until you get it figured out and stable. Otherwise, I mean, there's a lot of really good routers out there that will support all of these things. You just may not get the same level of assurance that you would get with something like DDWRT, OpenWRT, Tomato, just to make sure I'm giving those a shout out.
That's it for the Q&A this week. Again, we want to thank all of you who left a question and are active supporters of this podcast. We literally couldn't do it without all of you guys. So thank you all. And if you want to join them and join us and be a part of what we're doing, you can do that down below with Patreon, with LibrePay, with XMR Chat, and with Ghost.
Not LibrePay.
Not LibrePay. We will not answer questions from LibrePay because there is no way to ask questions on LibrePay. Thank you.
Sorry, guys. We wish we could.
Yeah, that's another thing we can't really, that's kind of out of our control. We're actually not allowed to offer perks on LibrePay, period. That's like part of the terms of service of using LibrePay. So yeah, anyway, you have those other options now. Is there going to be a way to do Q&A on Ghost?
Yeah, when you pay for Ghost, you should be able to leave comments on posts. If not, shoot us an email. Let us know. I will look into that, but I'm pretty sure I can figure that right.
And that's it. Check it all out in the description. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next week.